Welcome back to the 8th concession. My name is Natalie. The gardening season has not gone the way I planned this year. I've mentioned before, I am so far behind. It is now June 4th or 5th, I can't even remember, and I haven't even got my plants planted. Today is the day that all the things on my step are going to get planted in the garden. They don't look great, they're not happy in their pots. I don't even know if they're going to survive, quite frankly, because some of them look pretty rough, but I'm going to give them a chance. They're going in the garden beds. I finally got the new garden bed finished. It took a lot longer than I planned. So many other things going on in our family that I just couldn't get to it quickly. But it's in. I don't have the top stones yet. I still can't get them from the store, but that's fine. It's in. I have to get the deer fence up, otherwise I might be planting it just to make a buffet for the deer, but nonetheless, they're going in today without fail. We haven't had any rain for 3 weeks, maybe, but it is, there is a chance of rain over the next 4 days, so this is the perfect time to get them in. It's a lovely day this morning. Let's get the garden planted. First things first, I'm going to plant my very sad looking zucchini plants who've been in this tray far too long into the new extension. I'm just going to smooth that out and get them growing. These are, look at the root. These are the Romanesco zucchini. They're a striped zucchini, an heirloom variety. We really like them. So I think I'll put 5. Might be squishing them a bit, but oh look, this one's got blooms already. They're so desperate, they're thinking we better bloom or die. Now we've been having cold temperatures again overnight, down to 9 degrees Celsius. So I actually put cloches over my gourds. This I planted as seed, loofah seeds. I don't know if they're going to come. Oh, actually I think that one right there is coming. Because not all my loofahs made it. So I think there is the seed coming there. So that's why I had both spots covered. The birdhouse gourds, they're doing fine. Now the last thing I'm going to do in this bed is this empty space here. That was where my spinach was, which I harvested on the weekend. But I noticed in the corner, I don't know if you can see right by the garlic in there, dill weed, a dill plant, seeded itself from last year. So I thought, well, this is the perfect spot then to plant the rest of my dill. So that's what I'm going to do now. Right there. I have a mole in this garden. When I planted this garden, I didn't know I had a mole problem down here. And I didn't put hardware cloth in the bottom of these beds, something I'm really regretting. I did put hardware cloth in the newest bed that I just built, but these, I think, come the fall, maybe when they're empty, I'm actually going to have to empty all the soil out of here, lay down hardware cloth and put it all back. Not a job I'm looking forward to, but it's a mistake I made, not knowing I had this issue. And they're almost impossible to get rid of. Every time I do anything to the holes, there's a new hole in a different spot the next day. I am worried that he's going to eat all my onions when they're big enough. You know how excited I was to grow these Dutch onions from seed, but there's not much I can do at this point, so lesson learned. All I have left to do in bed number 2 is this area back here, which hasn't been planted yet, and this is where I've decided to put my beets and my celery root. I'm so late with the beets, but I think I'll still be able to get some off of them. You can see at the far side over there, a tomato plant has, it's a volunteer. I had the Cup of Moldova plum tomatoes, sauce tomatoes here last year. I suspect that's what it is. I should probably pull it. I mean, there was blight in this bed last year, but you know, I just can't kill them. Oh, actually, I think there's another little one right down here. I can't. I'm just going to let it do its thing. It won't hurt the beets or the celery root. So, you know, yeah, I just can't kill something that's worked so hard to live. So just some ordinary Detroit dark red beets. And then the celery root that I got from the same place where I got the Stuttgarter Riesen onion seeds. So, get them in the ground. One row down the middle for the celery root, and then 2 rows of beets on either side. Yes, that's what I'm going to do. I'm not that particular with straight rows. In the corners, I'm going to plant 1 marigold in this corner and some zinnia seeds in the other. Thumbelina mixed colors. I'm going to plant some flowers at the front too. I like flowers. The marigolds are good for a bit of pest control, and the others are just good for pollinators and some beauty in the garden. I can see Mr. Mole has another little hole there. At the front here, I'm going to grow some Gaillardia. I think that's how you pronounce it. I did start some from seed, but they just didn't do well in the flats that I had. They were just in there too long. This also can be sown directly in the garden. It says do not cover, they need light. So I'm going to put some Gaillardia here, and I think on the other side I'll put some Gazania. I really like these. These open in the sunshine. So that's what's going to be planted at the front here. The last thing I'm going to do here, this is where I'm growing my lettuce, but I do want to try some of the green salad bowl lettuce that I got as a free gift with my seed purchase. So back in that empty space back there, I'm going to plant a few and see if I like them. And just like that, bed number 2 is done. And excitingly, I planted some pole beans at the front of my trellis here, and I can see that they're up right there and right there. So despite the mole so far, this garden is looking good. Bit of garlic at the front, flowers, pole beans, loofahs, birdhouse gourd, butter crunch lettuce, green salad bowl lettuce. These are the Stuttgarter Riesen onions from seed. There were a few from sets that were left over. And back here, 3 rows of beets on each side, 1 row of celery root in the middle, a volunteer tomato, and some flowers. Oh, and the potatoes in the fiber pots are looking great. This is bed number 3. It's pretty much planted out, but there's a little bit of space between the cabbages and the celery along the edge, and I'm just going to put a few parsnip seeds in that empty space. Because you know me, you can't leave a space empty in the garden when you could be growing something. Bed number 3 was easy because it was mostly done, and I can see My pole beans coming up there as well. The cucumbers still looking a bit sad because, as I said, they were in too long. But look, there's new growth right there. I think they're going to be just fine. Some snap peas, the parsnip and celery, the cabbages are doing really well. The onions that I planted to go to seed are doing just that. You can see they're getting ready to flower. So that's perfect. And down the side, the leeks are finally taking off. Bed number 4 is a bit more of a nightmare, and that's because I still haven't taken out all this lettuce that self-seeded. It's getting a little bitter now, so we're not eating it ourselves. It's been very warm here, so I've been feeding it to the chickens and the turkeys, but I haven't taken it all out yet, so I can't plant there, which is the problem. I did plant a few more leeks around the edge, pole beans at the front, cucumbers, peas, and then celery along the 2 sides, but nothing is in the middle. And this garden is also supposed to be extended. You can see the blocks there, and I just haven't gotten to it. And you can see back here the reeds are just taking over. They're just so aggressive. So this bed, I wanted to plant my kidney beans and my white beans that I want to make baked beans out of. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to plant the space I have now, try and get that last extension done, and then maybe plant it out with some more beans. I have to think about that. I'm also going to have to wait on this because I don't want this lettuce to go to waste, and I'm giving 4 or 5 bunches to the chickens each day, so it won't be long before they're gone. So I'm afraid this bed is not going to be finished, but I will plant the beans now and at least get that off my list. Alright, I've got Montcalm kidney bean and Polish pea bean. I think I'm going to put the red down one side and the white down the other just for ease. Yeah, and I think I can get maybe 2 rows out of each, or am I pushing it again? Am I crowding my garden again? You don't really have to answer that. I know I am. I just can't help myself. And you can see in this farthest bed, the reeds are still coming up into the garden. I pull them out, hoping that eventually the roots will run out of energy to keep sending them up, but so far, they're relentless. And finally, the brand new bed. Now, I don't have the capstones on the edges, they're on order, but the bed is ready to be planted. And as this is the first year for it, I'm going to put the tomatoes here because there hasn't been any blight in this garden yet, but hey, give it time in this wetland. You can see my tomato plants. These are the saddest tomatoes I have ever grown. They've been in their pots too long. I planted them a bit later than I wanted to. They desperately need to get in the ground or they're not going to make it. I have 4 varieties. I have the, I think in the tiny pots over here. The tiny pots right here, I have Matt's cherry tomatoes. And there's also a cocktail size one called Mountain Magic. I believe I only have 2 of those. The rest are the Cup of Moldova plum tomatoes, sauce tomatoes some people call them. And the rest are the Peron sprayless slicing tomatoes, the ones that really handled the blight best last year and had beautiful, even red fruit. They're all heirloom varieties. I also have 2 Tidy Treat, which is another kind of cherry tomato, and these lovely looking plants were actually grown by my daughter-in-law. So I'm going to plant them as well. I'm going to put the cherry tomatoes at the front, both the Matt's cherry tomato and the Tidy Treat, then the 2 Mountain Magic, and then I think Cup of Moldova next, and the Peron Sprayless at the back. That's the plan. Let's see if I can fit them. I'm going to have tomatoes left over again. I don't know what I'm going to do with all the extra tomatoes. I have to find some friends who need free plants. All right, here we go. Remember, the Cup of Moldova are determinate. I have some tomato cages for them, which I'll just quickly pop over them. The Peron Sprayless, they seem to be indeterminate to me. I'd have to look on the website. It doesn't say on the package. But I have some really tall tomato supports that I have, so I'm going to use those down at the bottom. The Tidy Treat here is a dwarf variety. It doesn't need any support, and I have never grown the Matt's cherry tomatoes here in the corner, these 3. So, I don't know, to me they look like they're going to be dwarf, but that just might be because they're not doing well. But I think, you know, by the looks of them, they're not going to need much support. The Mountain Magic, I grew that from seed I saved. I don't know if it's going to come true to type, but I really liked the cocktail-sized tomatoes. That one, I can't remember now. I think that one was also indeterminate, so it might need a stronger support, but I'm going to do that now. But the bed is planted. Wow, I'm already feeling so much better, but what do I have left to do? I have the sweet corn and the pumpkins. Now, the sweet corn and the pumpkins, unfortunately, are going to have to go in the ground behind me because I didn't get the rest of the beds made, the raised beds made. And I'm just going to work on that myself over the next day or so. You can see I've put down a lot of grass clippings to try and keep the weed pressure down, because back here, well, you can see behind me, the reeds are just determined to make a comeback after the trenching last year. And they're really bad here along the fence. They are just so hard to get rid of. So I've put down some grass clippings just for all the other weed pressure. I'm going to have to move it aside to plant the corn and hope that the red-winged blackbirds don't eat it again this year. And I think over in that really bad corner, even though it is bad, I'll cut back and dig up those weeds. And I'm going to put the pumpkins there because it is very wet in that corner and the pumpkins will love that. And I still have the extension to do. I have to finish that 4th bed. Do the extension. I have 2 blue pumpkin plants. I might put them in the extension and see how they do in the raised bed, and put the other regular orange jack-o'-lantern pumpkins in the ground. So pumpkins, extension, pumpkins, and corn. I don't know that I'm going to get any sunflowers planted this year. We will see. However, I am feeling so much better to get those plants in the ground, especially those poor, sad tomatoes. But I think they'll make a comeback. What I'm going to do now, that's all the planting I'm going to do for today. We actually have an air quality advisory here. There are a lot of forest fires, really bad ones, in both Quebec and Northern Ontario, as well as BC, but that's too far away from us. But the ones in Quebec and Northern Ontario are affecting us here. I can actually smell smoke in the air, and we're not even actually anywhere near them. They're quite a ways up north, but the smoke is making its way into southern Ontario. They don't advise you being out too much in it, especially if you can smell it. I can smell it. It smells like a neighbor up the street has a fire, and they don't. So that's kind of concerning. So that's all I'm going to do for today. I'm going to have to watch how long I spend out in this smoky air. It's really bad for you. But I am going to then tomorrow start on the extension, the pumpkins and the corn, get them in the ground, and then it's just maintaining the garden, which is my favorite part of the year. But so far, I'm very pleased with how it's looking, and I'm pleased that those other poor plants and seeds are finally in the ground. I hope your gardening is going more smoothly than mine is this year. But you never know. That's how gardening is, right? You have to work with the weather, you have to work with the season, you have to work with the soil and the bugs that you have. So every year is a little bit different. I am still quite pleased so far, and then I'll just be watching the sad cucumbers and tomatoes and squash that I planted to make sure they make a recovery. So I'm going to give everything a good solid watering now, and then head in for the day out of this smoky air. Bye for now.